What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing a Rich Dad, Poor Dad book hook. If you guys have not read this book, it is one of the best books that I have ever read in my entire life. It has sold over 32 million copies, and it was first published in 1997. But even though this book was published more than 20 years ago, the ideas and concepts in this book are still extremely relevant today. This book literally changed my life, and it can change your life too, if you actually apply the principles that are taught in this book. If you don't know who Robert Kiyosaki is, Robert Kiyosaki is an American businessman, investor, author. He is best known for his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert makes it very clear throughout the book that he was never poor. In fact, he was born into a wealthy family. However, despite coming from a wealthy family, he made some of his best money moves later on in his life. So this book is not about how to get out of poverty, but rather it's about how to become financially free. The main character in the story, so the author tells a story throughout the book, and there's two dads in this story. There's a rich dad and a poor dad. The rich dad represents the wealthy father figure that the author had in his life, while the poor dad represents the poor mindset that most people have when it comes to money. And the author makes it very clear that the poor dad was not actually poor. He was just stuck in this rat race, working for the man and living paycheck to paycheck. And this is how most people live their lives today. They're stuck in this rat race because they have been programmed to believe that working for the man is the only way to make money. And once you start working for the man, you will never become rich. Throughout the book, the author shares some very controversial and uncomfortable truths about money and the way that the system works. After reading this book, you will never be the same. You will see the world in a completely different way. I recommend this book to everybody. Even if you think that you know it all when it comes to money, even if you're an experienced investor, you will still learn something from this book. And I've read this book several times, and there are some amazing lessons that you can learn from it. So we will go through all of the chapters in this book. So if you want to join me on this journey, please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any new videos. So let's begin with Chapter 1. The rich don't work for money. As we know, money is one of the most important things in our lives, because it allows us to do so many things, buy what we want, help others, travel, and much more. But have you ever wondered how to make money? There are lots of ways to make money. People say that money doesn't grow on trees, but actually it does. Have you ever seen a farmer plant seeds and harvest crops? The farmer exchanges his labor for the crops. The crops can then be sold for food. The farmer is paid for his labor. Food is purchased with the money he earned. And so, the cycle of money continues. So you see that money does grow on trees, grows on the money tree. All you have to do is plant the right seed and take care of it until it grows. My real rich dad believed that people should not work for money. Instead, money should work for them. He said that people who work for money usually have very little of it, while people who make their money work for them become rich. Let me explain. Most people believe that the way to get ahead financially is to earn more money by working harder. For example, when I was young, my poor dad would come home from work, eat dinner, and watch TV before going to bed. My real dad would come home late after visiting business associates. He always said that those who want to make money must work hard to earn it. After graduating high school, my poor dad told me that I should find a good job with good benefits such as health insurance and a pension plan. He said that these benefits were signs of a good job. He also said that I should choose a career that was safe and had job security. So I went to college to become a qualified accountant like him. However, my real dad disagreed with my poor dad. He said that my poor dad was a typical employee, a typical worker bee. My real dad said that people like my poor dad are good at making money for the company they work for. They are good at helping the company to grow, but not good at growing their own money. He explained that the problem with my poor dad and people like him is that they think that money is safe only when they have a regular paycheck deposited into their bank account each month. So my real dad did not encourage me to follow in my poor dad's footsteps. In fact, he didn't even want me to become an accountant, because accountants, in his opinion, primarily help other people to keep track of their money. My real dad wanted me to learn how to handle money instead. He wanted me to become financially free, he told me. If you want to be financially secure, you need to learn how to make your money work for you. The rich understand this concept. You might think that the best way to achieve financial freedom is to save money. Many people put their savings into a bank account, believing it will make them rich. However, since I was young, I knew that saving money was not enough to make me rich. Otherwise, the banks would be the richest institutions in the world, because they have the savings of billions of people around the globe. Although banks charge interest on savings accounts, it is often not enough to cover the cost of inflation, which means that the purchasing power of your savings may decrease over time. So you could wake up one day and realize that you have $10,000 in the bank, but you could only buy half as much as you could before. Another popular way of saving money is buying insurance. People purchase insurance policies hoping that they will make them rich. However, insurance companies are designed to collect more money from policyholders than they pay out in claims. Insurance companies are businesses that exist to make money, not to make you rich. So again, you could wake up one day and find that your insurance has not made you rich. Many people also invest their money in stocks or bonds, believing that investing will make them rich. However, although some people become rich through investing, the majority do not. Investing involves taking risks, and many people lose money when they invest. Also, both stocks and bonds are owned by companies that use your money to generate revenue. So again, you could wake up one day and find that your stocks or bonds have not made you rich. Instead of teaching me about financial security, my poor dad taught me about financial worry. He taught me that if I bought expensive things on credit, I needed to be careful that I could pay off the debt before the next paycheck came along. He worried about whether he would receive a pay raise at his next performance review, worried about whether he would get a bonus, worried about whether the company would provide a pension when he retired, worried about how much tax he would pay on his income, and he worried about how much money he would need to leave to his children. My poor dad never seemed to stop worrying about money. But my real dad never worried about money. He understood how to make money work for him, and therefore was never worried about it. When I asked him what I should do after graduating from college, he gave me some simple advice. He said, "Don't work for money. Find a way to make money work for you. If you want to be rich, break the mold. Don't be a typical worker bee. Become financially free." Even though I thought being an accountant was a safe career choice, I didn't listen to my poor dad and went against his wishes. After graduation, I became an accountant. But I didn't just become any accountant. I became an expert in the field. I started my own accounting firm. Soon I was making more money than my poor dad. I could have been a typical worker bee and lived comfortably without worrying about money. But I wanted to become financially free, like my real dad. So I decided to continue learning how to make money work for me. In the following chapters, I will share with you everything that I learned from my real dad about making money work for you. You will learn how the rich create assets. I will teach you how to avoid the common mistakes of the middle class. I will tell you what to look for when investing your money so that it will increase in value. Stay tuned to the next chapter where we will discover the secrets of assets and liabilities. So this is the end of chapter 1. If you liked this story, please leave a thumbs up, comment, and share this video with your friends. Alright, let's continue reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is a great book for those of us who are interested in becoming financially free and independent. This is chapter 2. Why teach financial literacy? So let us start with a little review of what we talked about in chapter 1. In that chapter, Robert described his two dads. His real dad was a very educated man, highly respected in society, but who lived his whole life working for the government. And so he really emphasized the importance of getting a good education so that my son can get a good job. On the other hand, Robert's rich dad didn't have a formal education after high school. He did drop out before graduating, but he understood something that Robert's real dad didn't. Rich dad knew the power of financial education, understanding how money works, how to use money to make more money. So while Robert's real dad kept emphasizing the importance of getting a good education so he could get a good job, Rich Dad said, "No, you need to learn how to use your money, not just how to make money." Real Dad believed that financial security came from having a high-paying job, whereas Rich Dad believed financial security came from making investments that earned more money than he was spending. The key difference, according to Rich Dad, is this. The school my teacher sent me to taught me how to work for money. They never taught me how to make money work for me. As we discussed in chapter 1, one of the first things Rich Dad told Robert was, "You never with a job. You work for money, but money doesn't work for you. You need to make it work for you." But why does money need to work for you? Why should it work for you? What's wrong with working for money? Let's take a look at the following quote on page 23. It says, "I believe one reason many people do not achieve financial success is because they do understand the difference between an asset and a liability. Let's define these terms. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. All right, that sounds simple enough. So what's so hard about that definition? Well, most people assume that their house is an asset because they own it. However, if you take a closer look at the definition of an asset, you will see that an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. Does owning a home put money in your pocket, or does owning a home take money out of your pocket? Obviously, owning a home usually takes money out of your pocket in the form of property tax, insurance, maintenance, repairs, etc. Therefore, a home is a liability. Now sure, some people are able to rent their homes out and that puts money in their pockets, but that's not the case for most homeowners. Their home is a liability. It takes money out of their pockets. Okay, so what is an asset? Again, an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. So what kind of assets are there? Well, an asset can be anything that makes you money. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, precious metals like gold and silver, notes and other types of paper assets, real estate that you rent out, businesses that generate profit, etc. Now, it's important to note that these assets don't automatically become assets just because you own them. For example, in order for your stock to be an asset, you must actually sell that stock for a profit. If you buy a stock and then hold on to it and it loses value, then that stock is not an asset. That stock is a liability. It's taking money out of your pocket. Similarly, you might have heard stories of famous actors and actresses or musicians or even athletes who filed for bankruptcy despite earning millions of dollars. Why do you think they went bankrupt? Well, it's because they spent all of their money. They had liabilities. They were buying luxury items, mansions, fast cars, jewelry, yachts, private jets, etc. Even though they were making lots of money, they had no assets. Everything they bought was a liability. Took money out of their pockets. So when their cash ran out, they were broke. They were in debt. They were technically insolvent. All right, now that we know the difference between an asset and a liability, let's go back to the quote on page 23. It says, "I believe one reason many people do not achieve financial success is because they do not understand the difference between an asset and a liability." Now that we understand the difference between an asset and a liability, what's so difficult about that? Well, the reality is that most of us are taught to view our home, our car, our clothing, our vacations, and even our schooling as assets. After all, isn't that what they teach us in school? Isn't that what the media tells us? You're constantly bombarded with advertising messages telling us that we need this or that item in order to be happy. We need a new car to be happy. We need a mansion to be happy. We need designer clothing to be happy. We need expensive handbags to be happy. We need beautiful jewelry to be happy. We need a big screen TV to be happy. And how many of these things are assets? How many of them actually put money in your pocket? Most of them are liabilities. They take money out of your pocket. They make you poor. According to statistics, 68% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency expense. 1/3 of all Americans cannot even come up with $1,000 in the event of a car crash or a burst pipe. Do you know why? Because most of them have been conditioned to spend their entire income on liabilities that make them poor. When they hear the term asset, they think of things like houses and cars and vacations, things that make them poor. That's why it's so important that we learn financial literacy. If we don't understand the difference between an asset and a liability, then we will never become financially free. Instead, we will live our whole lives working for money. Our paychecks will go directly to the rich, the investors, the asset owners, and we will never become financially independent. All right, let's move on to the next quote on page 27. This quote illustrates the point that schools tend to overlook financial education. It says, "Too often our schools teach us that it's selfish to want to be rich." We're taught that people who want to accumulate wealth are greedy or motivated by unhealthy desires. How many of us have heard statements like this? Money is the root of all evil. It's greedy to want to earn lots of money. Don't chase the almighty dollar. Stop being so materialistic. These are the type of messages that are taught in our schools and within our communities. And they are exactly the type of messages that keep people poor. If you want to be rich, if you want to be financially free, then you cannot listen to these messages. You must understand that money is not the root of all evil. It's lack of financial education that is the root of all evil. People who want to accumulate wealth are not greedy. simply understand the power of compounding interest. They know that money is like a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts small, but it gets bigger and bigger as it picks up more and more snow. Similarly, money invested in the market compounds over time, grows exponentially. People who want to earn lots of money are not materialistic. They're smart. They understand that money is a scorecard. It's a measurement of how well you're doing in the game of business. Materialistic people may buy luxury items, but those items are liabilities. They don't make you any money. They're not assets. The only way to become rich is to focus on increasing your income and decreasing your expenses. The best way to increase your income is to learn how to invest, how to make money work for you. The best way to decrease your expenses is to stop buying liabilities that keep you poor. Start buying assets that make you rich. Alright, so those are the main points from Chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed this video. Alright, now we're going to get into the good stuff, the money part. This is Chapter 3 from Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Let's get started. Okay, so we start this chapter with Robert meeting one of his best friends in high school who's older than him. His name was Mitch. And they were talking about jobs, how much money they made, and their future plans. And Robert told Mitch that he wanted to work for his dad, who owned a small business. And then Mitch responded with this line, which I loved. And this is the first lesson of this chapter. Work for your own father. Work for someone else's money, and you are just building someone else's financial assets. This is so true. If you think about it, if you work for your boss, you're working for your boss's money, right? You're making your boss richer. Or if you work for your parents, you're making them richer because you're making their money. So instead, why not make your own money? Instead of building somebody else's financial assets, build your own. Make your own money work for you. That S-Y at S. Super important to have a side hustle or a business of some kind where you can work for your own money. And after high school, Robert went to college and got a degree in accounting and business. But even though he had these degrees and knew a lot about money, he wasn't rich. In fact, when he graduated college, he actually had more debt than when he entered college. Here's a fun fact. When Robert graduated college, he owed $28,000 in student loans. But today he has no debt, and he owns over 50 businesses. That's a pretty impressive turnaround. So here's a question for you. What do you want your financial situation to be like in 5 years? Do you want to be further in debt, or do you want to be out of debt and own some businesses? Because the answer will determine what you do today. Robert had a couple odd jobs here and there while going to college. He was an emergency medical technician and worked in a hospital morgue. But after he graduated college, he got a job at a bank and became an accountant. And this is where he met some people who taught him about investing in real estate. They introduced him to the idea of leverage, which is using other people's money to make money. And this was a whole new world to Robert because he had never heard of it before. Most people don't learn this in school. In fact, most people think that the way to make money is through hard work, which is not always true. The guys at the bank would tell Robert that making money in real estate was easy. All you had to do was find a property owner who did. You'd want to manage their property and convince them to let you lease the property. Then you would put a tenant into the property and you make money every month. They also told Robert that if he ever wanted to buy his own property, all he needed was 20% down and the rest of the money could be borrowed from the bank. When Robert asked how to pay for the down payment, they said the same thing. Just find someone who doesn't want their property and convince them to let you buy it, and then you borrow the money to pay them. This was mind-blowing to Robert because he had never thought of doing it that way. In fact, up until this point, he didn't know anyone who was independently wealthy or made money through investments. One day, Robert and his wife were looking through the newspaper, and they saw an ad where a man was selling his house for less than it was worth because he was getting a divorce and needed the money. Robert immediately called the number in the ad and set up a time to meet with the owner. When they met, Robert explained that he wanted to buy the house, but he didn't have any money and couldn't afford a large down payment. And the owner responded by saying, "That's fine. I don't want the house. I need the money. Name your price." This shocked Robert because he was so used to hearing no whenever he asked for a discount. But this guy was literally saying yes, 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 and he kept saying it over and over again. So Robert asked him, "How low can I go?" To which the owner responded, "0. I don't want the house. You take it off my hands. I'll even pay you to take it." Robert couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was this owner crazy? Why was he giving Robert a house for free? And this is the next lesson of the book. The reason the owner was willing to sell Robert the house for free was because he wanted to get rid of it so bad. He didn't care how much the house sold for. He didn't care if it sold for a loss. All he cared about was getting rid of it. Robert says there's three main reasons why people give up their assets for next to nothing. The first reason is a divorce. Divorce is probably the one reason why people give up their assets for cheap. The second reason is sickness. People who become seriously ill or get close to death will often sell their assets for very little. And the third reason is jail. People who have been accused of white-collar crimes such as fraud or embezzlement will sell their houses for really cheap. If you can find someone who needs money and you offer them a fair deal for their asset, they will usually accept it because they need money more than they need the asset. Sometimes people need money so badly that they will sell their assets below market value. And this is where leverage comes in. Banks will lend money to people who want to buy assets below market value because they know those assets will increase in value over time. Robert says the key to making money is buying things below market value and adding value to them so you can sell them for above market value. And the way Robert added value to this property was by fixing it up and renting it out. He fixed up the house with his own two hands and then rented it out for a profit. This is a great strategy if you have a lot of time on your hands, but it does require a lot of sweat equity. But the key is to buy low and sell high. And that's how Robert made his first real estate investment. So here's a question for you. Have you ever looked in the classified section of the newspaper or online for deals? You'd be surprised at how many people are willing to sell their stuff for next to nothing. A lot of times people are willing to give away stuff just to get rid of it. Now that Robert bought his first house, he started looking for tenants to rent it out to him. But here's the problem. Robert didn't know any tenants. He had never rented out a property before, and he didn't know where to start. So he drove around town and looked for apartment complexes. He found one and decided to knock on the door and see if anyone could help him. When the manager opened the door, Robert asked her if she knew anyone who was looking for a house to rent. She said yes, and gave him a piece of advice, which was the second lesson of this chapter. If you want to find out what people want, ask them. And sure enough, the manager gave Robert the names of several people who were looking to rent a house. When Robert went to meet these potential tenants, he offered them a house that was move-in ready, meaning it had been fixed up and was ready for them to live in. And this gave him the upper hand in negotiations because they didn't have to fix anything. These tenants would call Robert begging to rent his house because it was ready to go. Robert says, whenever you buy an asset, you should do your best to fix it up and get it ready to use. That way you can charge top dollar for it. Here's a quick story to illustrate this concept. Let's say you have a friend named Tim who wants to buy a car. Tim goes to the dealership and finds a car he likes, but it's super dirty. There are leaves and trash all over the seats. The windows are covered in bugs and the engine looks like it hasn't been cleaned in years. Tim buys this car and tries to sell it to someone else. He's have a hard time finding a buyer because nobody wants to buy a dirty car. On the other hand, let's say Tim buys the same exact car, but this time it's clean. The seats are detailed. The windows are bug-free and the engine is spotless. Which car do you think he'll be able to sell for more money? Obviously the clean one. This is because the more work someone has to put into something, the less they're willing to pay for it. But if you can do the work yourself and make it ready to go, you'll be able to charge more money for it. This is a great mindset to have whenever you're trying to buy something. Always try to buy something that's in poor condition and fix it up and make it look nice. That way you can charge more money for it. So those are the two lessons from Chapter 3. Work for your own money and not for somebody else's money. And if you want to find out what people want, ask them. The main topic of Chapter 4 is taxes. And for those of you that are not aware, taxes are the major way that governments get money to fund their operations. So if there are no taxes, then there is no money to build roads, schools, or pay the military. And for many years, people did not have to pay any tax at all. It was only when we started to have governments that people had to start paying taxes. Throughout history, there have been many ways of taxing people. In ancient Rome, they would tax farmers based on the size of their farm. Then from there, we moved to taxing people based on how much money they made or based on property ownership. But one thing that has always been constant throughout history is that rich people somehow manage to find a way to pay less in taxes than poor people. And in this chapter, the author gives us some examples of rich people who took tax evasion to a whole nother level. This is your host, and this is the fourth episode of our series where we are discussing the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified whenever we release new videos. The story begins with Robert returning home from school one day and hearing a commotion coming from his parents' room. He opens the door and sees his rich dad sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. His dad is explaining to his mother why he needs to incorporate his business. Incorporate means to form a corporation, which is basically a legal entity that is separate from its owners. This allows the business to enter into contracts, own property, and sue or be sued. But more importantly for our purposes, it allows the business to be taxed separately from its owner. When a business is incorporated, it becomes what is called an S corporation or a C corporation. And this is important because these types of corporations are passed through entities for tax purposes. This means that the corporation itself does not pay any taxes. Instead, the profits and losses of the business are passed through to the owners and then taxed at their individual income tax rates. This is different from a regular sole proprietorship or partnership where the owner and the business are taxed as one. This is important because as a sole proprietor or a partner, you are taxed at your income tax rate, which can be anywhere from 12 to 37% depending on how much you make. However, as the owner of a corporation, you are taxed at long-term capital gains tax rates, which are much lower, ranging from 0 to 20%. This means that if you make $1 million in a year from your business, you will pay much less in taxes if you are the owner of a corporation than if you are a sole proprietor or a partner. After hearing this, Robert's mom says, "I wish your father had thought of that before he got busted for tax evasion." It turns out that the rich dad had a history of getting into trouble with the IRS. Once he even got so pissed off with them that he told them, "You can't tax me because I don't pay taxes." And he followed through on that by incorporating his business and avoiding paying taxes for several years. Eventually, though, the IRS caught up with him, and he ended up having to pay a large fine. Although it sounds like he was doing illegal things, this is actually a completely legal and common tax strategy that many rich people use to reduce their tax liability. This brings up the point that while most people think that rich people are the ones who evade taxes and get away with it, it's actually the poor and middle class who end up paying the most in taxes. A perfect example of this is the fact that the richest people in America pay a smaller percentage of their income in taxes than the middle class. This is mainly due to the fact that they take advantage of all the tax loopholes that the government has created. Over the years, Congress has created a number of tax breaks and deductions that people can use to legally reduce their taxes. For example, if you buy a home, you can deduct the mortgage interest that you pay. Or if you donate money to charity, you can deduct that as well. Rich people are able to take advantage of these tax breaks on a larger scale because they usually have more money to invest and also more money to donate to charity. Another reason why rich people pay less in taxes is because they usually have more complicated tax situations. This means that they need to hire teams of lawyers and accountants to help them navigate the tax code and find all the loopholes that they can exploit. Of course, this is not something that the average person can do. Robert then asks his rich dad how he was able to incorporate his business without having enough money. His dad replied by saying, "That's why you go to the bank." Banks love to lend money to small businesses. They know that the chances of you failing are high. But they also know that you're going to try really hard not to fail. And if you succeed, you're going to be very profitable. This is an extremely important concept to understand, because it explains why rich people often become rich in the first place. It is not because they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, but rather because they are able to take advantage of opportunities that are not available to the average person. One of those opportunities is borrowing money to start a business. As Robert's dad explained, banks love to lend money to small businesses because they know that they will be very profitable. This means that if you want to start a business, you should go to the bank and ask for a loan. If you are able to convince the bank that your business is a good investment, they will be more than happy to lend you the money. Of course, this is easier said than done. Banks are not in the business of handing out loans to people who they think are risky. This is why you should not approach a bank with the idea of starting a lemonade stand. On the other hand, if you want to start a business that has the potential to be very profitable, then the bank will be much more willing to lend you money. The last part of the chapter talks about the power of a corporation. Corporations have the ability to raise money from investors much easier than other types of businesses. This is because when you buy stock in a corporation, you are buying a small piece of the company. This means that if you invest $1,000 into a corporation, you are now a part owner of that company. As a part owner, you have the right to vote on important decisions that affect the company. You also have the right to receive dividends if the company makes a profit. Finally, if the company ever goes bankrupt, you will be entitled to a portion of the assets that are left over after all the debts are paid off. This is extremely powerful because it means that corporations can raise money from investors simply by selling them a small piece of the company. Of course, this is easier said than done. In order to attract investors, you need to have a solid business plan and a team of experienced managers. But if you are able to put all of this together, then you will have a corporation that is capable of raising huge amounts of money. One example of this is Apple. When Apple first went public in 1980, they sold 45% of the company to investors. This raised the company $110 million. At the time, this was one of the largest IPOs or initial public offerings in history. Since then, Apple has gone on to become one of the most valuable companies in the world. And all of this started with a single decision to incorporate and sell a portion of the company to investors. So in this video, we learned about Chapter 4 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was all about taxes. We learned that rich people pay less in taxes than poor people, not because they evade taxes, but because they take advantage of all the tax loopholes that the government has created. We also learned that corporations have the ability to raise money much easier than other types of businesses. And that is because when you buy stock in a corporation, you are buying a small piece of the company. If you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified whenever we release new videos. We're going to start with Chapter 5, which is called The Rich Invent Money. So let's begin. All right, so we're restarting off in Chapter 5 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Robert Kiyosaki is talking about how the rich invent money, whereas the poor and the middle class spend it. And I think that's such a great point because when we look at for example, the currency that we use today, the dollar, it was actually invented by Alexander Hamilton, right? He was one of the founding fathers. So what Mr. Kiyosaki is getting at is that if you want to be wealthy, you have to become a creator of money, not just a consumer of it. And he argues that people who just consume money will never be wealthy. They may become rich, but they won't become wealthy. So again, the difference between being rich and being wealthy is that one is temporary, one is long-term. He then goes on to explain how our entire economic system is based on debt and borrowing money. In fact, the United States government issues bonds that allow us to borrow money from each other. For example, when you buy a treasury bond, you are lending money to the government. And this creates an economy where people are constantly borrowing and owing money. So Robert Kiyosaki argues that if we're constantly living in this state of owing money, then how do we ever expect to become wealthy? He gives us a couple of examples of people who became wealthy by thinking outside of the box. For example, he talks about a friend of his who started a company that made photo frames for headstones. And at first this didn't seem like a very lucrative business. But eventually he expanded his business and began selling other products related to death, such as caskets. And this led him to becoming a millionaire. So Robert Kiyosaki is making the point here that there are all sorts of businesses out there that cater to people's needs, even in death. And there is money to be made in every industry, no matter how grim it may seem. He also talks about another person he knew who owned a chain of adult bookstores. And again, this may not sound like a very respectable business, but it turned out to be very profitable. So the author is trying to convey to us that if we're going to become wealthy, we need to be open to all sorts of different types of businesses and industries. We cannot limit ourselves to what we think is a respectable or appropriate business. We need to be willing to explore all of our options. He then goes on to share an interesting story about a man named Bill, who was a millionaire and owned a car dealership. One day a salesman came to him and said that he had an idea for a new type of car that would appeal to a certain market segment. But Bill told him that the market research was already done, and there was enough demand for this type of vehicle. However, the salesman was convinced that he was right, and that there was a need for this type of car in the market. So he borrowed money from his friends and family, and started buying parts to build the car himself. After spending $30,000, he built a prototype, and took it to a local mechanic who agreed to help him make some modifications. After further improvements, the car was ready to be sold. The author then shares the surprising twist in this story. It turns out that Bill was the one who had done the original market research, and he had concluded that there was enough demand for this type of vehicle. However, he had kept this information from the salesman because he wanted to see if the salesman would take initiative and try to sell the car anyway. And this is exactly what the salesman did. And in the end, it turned out to be a very profitable business move for Bill. So what Mr. Kiyosaki is getting at here is that sometimes you need to be willing to take risks and do things that have been done before in order to become wealthy. You can't always rely on market research and data to tell you what will be successful. Sometimes you need to trust your gut and go for it. However, he does acknowledge that this is easier said than done, and that most people are not willing to take the necessary risks to become wealthy. Alright, so now let's talk about action steps. What can you do to implement the ideas from this chapter in your own life? First of all, I want you to start thinking about ways that you can add value to other people's lives. This is the key to making money, no matter what industry you're in. If you can figure out a way to add more value than you are currently adding, then you will be able to make more money. Secondly, I want you to start thinking outside of the box when it comes to business. Don't limit yourself to what you think is a respectable or appropriate business. Be open to all sorts of different possibilities. And don't be afraid to explore different industries and markets. You never know what kind of opportunity might be out there waiting for you. Thirdly, I want you to be willing to take risks in order to achieve your financial goals. This doesn't mean that you should go out and gamble your money away. What it means is that you should be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and do things that you've never done before. You may not always succeed, but if you're willing to learn from your failures and adapt accordingly, then you will eventually get to where you want to go. And finally, I want you to remember that the rich invent money while the poor and middle class spend it. If you want to become wealthy, then you need to start thinking like an investor. Look for ways that you can put your money to work and generate more money. Don't just spend your money on material things. Invest it wisely and watch it grow over time. Chapter 6. Work to learn. Don't work for money. If you are interested in increasing your financial knowledge, improving your mindset related to money, or making more money or investing money, then this chapter is for you. So let's discuss Chapter 6 without any further ado. The very first point from the lesson 1 of this chapter: people do unlike to work for rich people because they think that rich people make them work hard. But in reality, it is the other way around. The reason rich people become rich is that they make others work hard, and there is a huge difference between these two things. When you work hard yourself, it is called self-disciplined. When you make someone else work hard, it is called management. Management is an art form, and it is also a high-level skill. And the most important thing is that good managers make more money than the people whom they manage. Why? Because a person can only earn what he or she is worth. A manager is worth more than his workers because he has a higher ability to generate money. He has a broader vision, and he knows how to utilize the workers and their skills to generate even more money. He can do this because he sees the big picture, whereas the worker focuses only on his job. Hence, always try to understand the difference between working and managing, and try to develop management skills as well, not just working skills. It's the next point from lesson no. One is that poor people and middle-class people often get confused when they see a rich man. They think that the rich man is earning millions of dollars, living a luxurious life, owning many assets, and having so much fun in life. And they get jealous of all this. Due to this, they start blaming the rich person for his success. Now, if you want to know why rich people become rich, then you must read the biography of rich people. For example, read the biography of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, or Warren Buffett. After reading their biographies, you will understand that being successful is not easy. These people have sacrificed so many things to become successful. For example, they had to sacrifice their time with family, their hobbies, and many other things. And hence, don't blame rich people for their success. Rather, learn from their lives and read their biographies. The next point from lesson number 1 is that one of the main reasons why poor people stay poor is that they do unwant to learn new things. This leads them to a dead-end job. They don't want to take risks. Hence, their earning potential remains limited. That is why they remain poor forever. The next point from lesson number 1 is that rich people don't work at all. Well, this doesn't mean that they don't do anything the whole day. It means that they don't work for money. Instead, They work to learn something new every day. See, if you want to keep on earning, then you must keep on learning. But if you stop learning, then sooner or later you will stop earning as well. That is why rich people always take out some time each day to learn something new. And if you want to become rich, then follow their footsteps and allocate some time every day to learn something new. And this could be done in many ways. You could read books, watch educational videos, attend seminars, or talk to successful people. In this way, you will constantly grow and develop yourself. And as a result, you will earn more money. Now, lesson number 2 from this chapter. You must work to learn, not for money. And if you start working to earn money, then you won't be able to earn much. But if you work to learn, then money will follow you. And this is the biggest difference between the mindset of rich and poor people. Poor people work to earn money, but rich people work to learn. And hence, money comes to them as a byproduct. The next point from lesson number 2 is that it is the corporate culture that glorifies work over learning. And this is one of the major reasons why most people become slaves of their jobs. They love their jobs more than their families, their hobbies, or any other part of their lives, and this is so sad. Hence, always remember that your job is not your life. You have created your life. Your life belongs to you, and your job doesn't. And hence, never let your job interfere in your life. Yes, it is very difficult to do, but still possible. And if you need more tips on that, then comment below. We'll definitely make a video on that. Next point from lesson number 2 is that the problem with school education is that here, students are taught to work for money rather than learning. Students are taught that they should work hard, study hard, play hard, party hard, etc. But they are not taught to work to learn. Schools teach students to work for money, colleges teach students to work for money, and universities also teach students to work for money. But no one teaches students to work to learn. And this is wrong. This is the reason why most people struggle throughout their lives. They work hard, but don't learn. And as a result, they live a mediocre life. They are neither rich nor poor. Next point from lesson 2 is that in the real world, those who work hard don't necessarily succeed. But those who succeed know how to make others work hard. And that is why they become successful. Now, in order to learn how to make others work hard, you must learn to motivate them. And for that, you must read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This book will help you to understand human psychology. It will help you to understand people, and this will help you to become a great leader. Now, lesson 3 from this chapter. Don't complain about working hard. Instead, say that you are working hard to learn something new. By doing this, you will attract positive energy towards you. See, if you complain about working hard, then you will attract negative energy. And hence, you will keep on attracting more and more negative things in your life. On the other hand, if you say that you are working hard to learn something, then you will attract positive energy towards you. This will help you to achieve your goals easily. The next point from lesson 3 is that in today's world, everyone is in a hurry to become rich. Everyone wants to earn millions of dollars, but no one wants to work hard. And that is why everyone fails. Remember, if you want to become rich, then you must be ready to work hard. Next point from lesson 3 is that the rich don't mind working hard. In fact, they love working hard. They enjoy working hard because they work to learn, not to earn. And this is the biggest difference between rich and poor people. The next point from lesson 3 is that, when I was young, my poor dad used to tell me that he has to work hard to earn money. And hence, I have to work hard too. I did the same for many years. I worked hard to earn money. Later, when I became rich, I realized that it was wrong. Working hard to earn money doesn't make you rich. Instead, working hard to learn new things makes you rich. And that is what I teach my kids. Teach them to work hard to learn new things. And that is why they are more successful than I was at their age. So that's all from Chapter 6 of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. Chapter 7. This is the chapter where Robert goes over obstacles that keep people poor, and the obstacle they have to overcome if they want to become rich. In this chapter, Robert talks about the obstacles that prevent people from achieving financial success, and how to overcome them. He emphasizes that these obstacles are mental rather than physical, and that they can be overcome with education, effort, and persistence. No. 1. People don't understand money. The first obstacle Robert identifies is that most people don't understand the basics of money. They don't know how it works or how to manage it. As a result, they make poor financial decisions that keep them trapped in poverty. To overcome this obstacle, Robert recommends that people take the time to learn about personal finance and invest in their financial education. By understanding how money works, people can make better decisions about how to earn, save, and invest their money. No. 2. People are afraid to take risks. Another obstacle that prevents people from becoming rich is fear. Specifically, they are afraid to take the risks necessary to achieve financial success. For example, they may be afraid of starting a business because they are unsure if it will be successful. Or they may be afraid to invest in stocks because they are worried about losing money. According to Robert, it is important to be aware of the risks involved in any decision. However, fear should not paralyze you. Instead, you should use it to make better decisions. Fear is a natural emotion that everyone experiences, but it should not control your life. If you are afraid of something, take some time to assess the risks involved and make a rational decision based on your findings. Don't let your fears hold you back from achieving your dreams. Number 3. People are afraid of being poor. One major obstacle that prevents people from getting rich is their fear of poverty. Many people are so afraid of being poor that they take actions that actually make them poorer. For example, they might stay in a low-paying job that they hate just for the sake of security. Or they might avoid investing in new opportunities out of fear of losing what they already have. This fear of poverty can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you are afraid of something, you often act in ways that make it more likely to happen. For example, if you are afraid of running out of money, you may start spending more money now because you think you won't have any in the future. This, of course, makes it more likely that you will actually run out of money. Robert argues that the best way to overcome this obstacle is to understand the root causes of poverty and then take steps to address them. Poverty is often caused by a lack of education, skills, or opportunities. Once you identify the root causes of poverty, you can start taking steps to overcome them. For example, you could invest in your education to improve your skills, or you could network with people in order to find new opportunities. By taking these steps, you can break the cycle of poverty and achieve financial success. No, for people don't value time. Time is one of our most valuable resources, yet it is often squandered by those who do not understand its importance. Robert states that many people are willing to sacrifice everything else in their lives in order to protect their time, such as sacrificing their relationships, health, or financial stability. However, when it comes to investing their time in financial education, they are often unwilling to make the necessary sacrifices. For example, they might spend hours watching TV every day, but they would resist spending even 30 minutes reading a book about personal finance. Robert argues that in order to become rich, you must value your time and invest it wisely. This means making conscious choices about how you spend your time and ensuring that those choices align with your long-term goals. It also means being willing to make sacrifices in the short term in order to achieve greater financial success in the long term. Remember, time is one of our most valuable resources, and if you want to become rich, you must learn to value it. No. 5. People don't have a plan. The first step towards achieving any goal is to create a plan. Without a plan, you are unlikely to achieve anything significant. Robert stresses that having a plan gives you direction and helps you focus on what is important. It also allows you to track your progress and make adjustments along the way. Unfortunately, many people do not have a plan for their finances. They just sort of drift along, hoping that someday they will become rich. But this is a recipe for disaster. You need to have a clear plan for your finances if you want to achieve your goals. Robert suggests that you start by setting some financial goals. What do you want to achieve? How much money do you want to have saved? Once you have a clear idea of what you want to achieve, you can start developing a plan to reach those goals. This plan should include specific actions that you will take, as well as a timeline for when you will achieve each milestone. Of course, it's important to remember that plans are only useful if you actually follow them. So once you've created a plan for your finances, commit to following it and make adjustments as needed. Planning is essential for financial success. And no. 6 is people quit too early. The final obstacle Robert discusses in this chapter is quitting too early. Many people are so close to achieving their goals, but they give up just when they are about to succeed. This could be because they become discouraged and feel like giving up, or because they face unexpected challenges and don't know how to overcome them. Whatever the reason, quitting too early is a common mistake that can prevent you from achieving your dreams. Robert argues that in order to achieve success, you need to be persistent and never give up on your goals. He also suggests that you surround yourself with positive people who believe in you and your abilities. Having a support system in place can help you stay motivated and focused on your goals, even when times are tough. Finally, Robert reminds us that success is rarely easy or effortless. Most people who achieve success have had to overcome significant obstacles and make sacrifices along the way. So if you're facing challenges on your journey to success, don't quit. Keep pushing forward and believe in yourself. So these are the 6 obstacles that Robert talks about in this chapter. I'm going to ask you, which one of these resonated with you the most? Which one of these obstacles are you currently facing? Let me know in the comments below. The next chapter that we be covering is Getting Out of the Rat Race, Chapter 8. Getting started. If you are new here, consider subscribing for future updates. Let's begin. Robert describes how his rich dad showed him that working for money is not a viable long-term strategy. Instead of that, he should make money work for him. His poor dad always said, "Work hard, and you will have financial security." But after some time, Robert realized that it was not true, because his poor dad worked harder than anyone else he knew. But he wasn't any better off than when he first started working. He used to wake up early in the morning before sunrise and go out to fix the car or do other odd jobs. After that, he would return home in the evening and then repeat the same process again the next day. On the other hand, Robert's rich dad was more educated than his poor dad, so he did not need to work as hard as his poor dad, yet he had much more money. It was only after he graduated from high school that Robert began to understand the difference between the way his rich dad and his poor dad viewed money. Robert asked his rich dad, "How can I make money?" In response, his rich dad simply pointed to his poor dad and said, "Your poor dad does not know how to make money. He works for money. That is why he is poor. Your job is to find a way to make money work for you. That is how you will become rich." Robert continues to explain that, although his rich dad was less educated than his poor dad, he understood the power of money. His poor dad never became rich because he just kept working for money. However, his rich dad made sure that money worked for him. So what exactly is the difference between these two ways of thinking? The answer lies in the following 7 steps that we are going to discuss in this video, so make sure to watch until the end. Step 1. You must learn how to manage your finances. Managing your finances means that you keep track of how much money you earn and spend each month. This will enable you to determine whether you are living within your means and will help you to save more money. It's simple arithmetic. If you spend less money than you earn, you will have a surplus. You can use this surplus in many different ways, such as investing it, paying off debt, or saving it for retirement. On the other hand, if you spend more money than you earn, you will be in debt. Step 2. Pay yourself first. When you pay yourself first, you are essentially setting aside a portion of your income for yourself, before paying anyone else. For example, let's say that you earn $3,000 per month. You might set aside $200 every month to invest in yourself before paying rent, utilities, and other expenses. By doing this, you are ensuring that you are always making money, even if your income does not increase. You can also use this money to invest in yourself by taking courses or buying books that will help you to advance in your career. Step 3. Differentiate between assets and liabilities. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. For example, if you buy a stock that pays you dividends, that stock is an asset. On the other hand, a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. For example, if you have a credit card debt, that debt is a liability. It's critical to comprehend the distinction between assets and liabilities since they are managed differently. You want to increase your assets while decreasing your liabilities in order to build wealth. Step 4. Make use of leverage. Leverage is essentially using other people's money to make money. For example, let's say that you want to start a business. You could use your own money to start the company, but it would be best if you could persuade someone else to invest in it. If the business succeeds, you will still receive money, but without risking any of your own capital. There are many different ways to employ leverage, but the idea is always the same. Use other people's money to generate money. Step 5. Learn how to write. One of the most important skills you can learn is how to write. Writing enables you to communicate your ideas to others. And if you can convince others to part with their money in exchange for your goods or services, you can make a lot of money. Writing is essential for success in almost any field. Whether you want to be a novelist, a journalist, a copywriter, or anything else. Step 6. Don't be afraid to ask for assistance. Asking for assistance is one of the most powerful strategies to get what you want. Whether you require financial, emotional, or physical support, there are people who can assist you. You must first learn how to ask for assistance. Most people never ask for help, which is why they fail. They believe they must do everything on their own, but this is not true. You can accomplish more and make more money if you are not afraid to ask for assistance. Step 7. Be persistent. Persistence is perhaps the most important quality of all. Persistence is the key to success. Whatever you choose to do in life, persistence is what separates successful people from non-successful people. Successful people are persistent, which means they don't give up easily. They understand that failure is only temporary and that they must keep moving forward. Non-successful people, on the other hand, give up quickly. They are not able to deal with the difficulties that accompany success. In addition to these 7 steps, Robert also provides some general advice for individuals who want to improve their financial situation. For example, he recommends that you keep your personal spending low and save as much money as you can. You can use this money to invest in assets that will generate passive income for you. Additionally, he advises you to educate yourself about money and investing. Knowledge is power, and the more you know about money, the better you will be able to manage it. Finally, he encourages you to take action. Many people merely talk about improving their financial situation, but they never take any action. You won't get any richer unless you take action. Start small, but take action anyway. As we come to the end of this video, let us leave you with some words of wisdom from the book. If you want to be rich, you must think like a rich person. Rich people have a very different mindset than poor people. They think differently, act differently, and make different choices. If you want to be rich, you must change the way you think about money. We encourage you to take charge of your financial future rather than allowing others to do it for you. By implementing the advice provided in this chapter, you can make progress toward achieving your financial objectives. Whether you want to save more money, invest more wisely, or live a more financially secure life, remember that the path to financial success requires patience and dedication. You won't become wealthy immediately, but with perseverance and a willingness to learn, you can enhance your financial situation over time. Chapter 9 of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad is titled, Still Want More? Here are some to-dos. In this chapter, the author emphasizes that financial education is crucial for achieving financial freedom and building wealth. He provides several actionable tips for readers who want to take control of their finances and achieve their financial goals. The author begins the chapter by acknowledging that some people may be satisfied with the information they have learned so far in the book, while others may want more. For those who want more, he offers 7 specific things they can do to improve their financial situation. First, the author suggests that readers should work on themselves by becoming financially educated. He explains that many people are not financially educated and do not understand the basics of money, such as how it is made, kept, and used. This lack of financial education often leads to financial problems, such as debt, bankruptcy, and poverty. Therefore, readers who want to improve their financial situation should start by educating themselves about personal finance. The author recommends reading books, attending seminars, and listening to audio programs on personal finance to improve one's financial education. Second, the author suggests that readers should learn how to keep more of what they make. He explains that most people spend all of their money on wants rather than needs, and this habit often leads to financial problems. Therefore, readers should learn to differentiate between wants and needs and focus on acquiring assets that can generate income. The author recommends keeping track of one's expenses and income to determine where one's money is going and how to best allocate it. Third, the author suggests that readers should think like rich people. He explains that poor people and middle-class people think differently than rich people. When it comes to money, for example, poor people tend to think that money is hard to make and that it is necessary to work long hours for low pay. Middle-class people, on the other hand, tend to think that money is easy to make and that it can be earned quickly through shortcuts or luck. However, rich people know that money is not easy to make and that it requires hard work, dedication, and a willingness to take risks. Therefore, readers who want to become rich should change their mindset and start thinking like rich people. Fourth, the author suggests that readers should develop a plan. He explains that most people do not have a plan for their finances, and this often leads to financial problems. Therefore, readers should develop a financial plan that outlines their goals, strategies, and timelines for achieving those goals. This plan should include specific actions that readers can take to improve their financial situation, such as increasing their income, reducing their expenses, and investing in assets. Fifth, the author suggests that readers should consider working with a professional. He explains that not everyone has the knowledge or experience to manage their finances effectively. Therefore, readers who feel that they need additional support should consider working with a financial advisor, accountant, or other professional who can help them develop a financial plan and manage their finances effectively. However, the author cautions readers to be careful when selecting a professional, as there are some who may not have the best interests of their clients in mind. Sixth, the author suggests that readers should keep learning. He explains that financial education is an ongoing process, and readers should never stop learning about personal finance. There are always new developments and changes in the financial world, and readers should stay up to date with these changes to ensure that they are making sound financial decisions. The author recommends joining investment clubs or groups of investors to learn from others who are experienced in investing. Seventh, the author suggests that readers should pay themselves first. He explains that many people do not save money because they spend all of their income on wants and needs. Therefore, readers should make saving money a priority by paying themselves first before paying others. This means that readers should set aside a certain amount of money each month for their own savings and investments before paying rent, utilities, or other expenses. By paying themselves first, readers can ensure that they are making progress toward their financial goals and building wealth over time. Overall, Chapter 9 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a practical and actionable chapter that provides readers with several tips for improving their financial situation. Whether readers are satisfied with the information they have learned so far in the book, or whether they want more, the author provides valuable insights and suggestions for anyone who wants to take control of their finances and achieve their financial goals. Now let's see some of the important quotes from the chapter that we have discussed. Quote No. 1. Poor people and middle-class people work for money. Rich people make money work for them. This quote highlights the difference between the way that rich people and non-rich people think about money. While poor and middle-class people often view money as something that is difficult to earn and must be worked for, rich people see money as something that can be made to work for them. Rich people understand that by investing their money in assets that generate income, they can create a passive income stream that allows them to live comfortably without having to work constantly. Quote number 2. Take control of your money before it becomes a source of worry and stress in your life. This quote emphasizes the importance of taking control of one's finances. When one's finances are out of control, it can lead to a great deal of worry, stress, and anxiety. However, by taking control of one's finances, one can avoid these negative emotions and instead use money as a tool to achieve one's goals. Taking control of one's finances involves developing a budget, tracking expenses, and investing wisely. By doing so, one can gain a sense of security and peace of mind, knowing that their financial future is in their hands. Quote number 3. Your ability to earn a salary is not the measure of your success as an investor. This quote challenges the common belief that a high salary is the ultimate measure of success. While a high salary can be an indicator of success in one's career, it is not necessarily a measure of success as an investor. Many people who earn high salaries also live high-income lifestyles and may not have much, if anything, left to invest. True success as an investor is measured by one's ability to grow their investments over time, regardless of their salary level. Therefore, it is important not to equate a high salary with financial success, and instead focus on developing a solid investment strategy. Now let's see what are some of the key takeaways from this chapter. Takeaway number 1. Financial education is essential for achieving financial freedom. Without financial education, individuals may struggle to manage their finances effectively, leading to debt, bankruptcy, and financial struggles. Takeaway number 2. It's important to keep more of what you make. By understanding financial statements and analyzing where your money is going, you can make better financial decisions and keep more of what you earn. Takeaway no. 3. Think like rich people. Rich people tend to think differently than poor or middle-class people when it comes to money. They have a different mindset and approach to managing their finances. Takeaway number 4. Develop a plan. A financial plan can help you stay focused and motivated, and can serve as a roadmap to guide you toward your financial goals. Takeaway no. 5. Consider working with a professional. A financial advisor, accountant, or other professional can provide valuable guidance and support as you work toward your financial goals. Takeaway number 6. Keep learning. Continuously educate yourself about personal finance and stay up to date with changes in the financial world. Takeaway number 7. Pay yourself first. Prioritize your own savings and investments and make it a habit to set aside a portion of your income each month. These key takeaways from Chapter 9 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad provide a solid foundation for anyone looking to improve their financial situation and build wealth. Chapter 10 starts with a bang, with Robert talking about how he was getting sued for $7 million and how his rich dad told him that if he wants to avoid being sued, then he needs to know how to play the financial game of money. It doesn't matter whether you are a famous person or not, rich or poor, black, white, or any other race. If you do not understand the rules of this game, you can still end up in serious trouble. Robert says that his poor dad and his rich dad both played by the rules of the game, but they had two different outcomes. His poor dad followed the rules of the game obediently and ended up working for 39 years at the same company until he retired. He followed all the steps. Get good grades, get into a good university, graduate, get a good job, work hard, and eventually you will get promoted. Unfortunately, even after 39 years of working, his pay was cut because the company was downsizing and he lost his house and all his savings in the stock market crash of 1929. So although his poor dad played by the rules of the game, he did not win. On the other hand, his rich dad also played by the rules of the game, but he played it from a position of power. He understood the rules and the system so well that he used it to his advantage and made a fortune. So Robert concludes that the only way to win the game is to learn its rules and understand the rules of the game, and then use that knowledge to your advantage. Otherwise, you will just be another player who loses the game. So let us now discuss the main points of the rules of the game, so that you can start playing the game and start winning. No. 1. Assets put money in your pocket. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. This means that if you want to become rich, you need to have assets. A common mistake that many people make is to think that assets are only properties, stocks, and bonds. However, this is not true. The classic definition of an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. Therefore, you need to think outside of the box when it comes to identifying assets. For example, if you have a skill that you can monetize, then your time is an asset. If you have a lot of contacts in the industry, then your network is an asset. Anything that puts money in your pocket is an asset. On the other hand, liabilities take money out of your pocket. Most people confuse assets with liabilities, and this is why they remain poor. For example, if you buy a car on credit, you might think that you own an asset that can take you places. However, you are wrong. The truth is that you have just bought a liability that will take money out of your pocket every month in the form of car payments, insurance, maintenance, and so on. The same goes for things like TVs, designer clothes, handbags, vacations, and so on. All these things take money out of your pocket, and they are liabilities. So if you want to become rich, you need to identify assets that put money in your pocket and avoid liabilities that take money out of your pocket. This is the first rule of the financial game. No. 2. Control your life. Many people think that they are free, but the truth is that they are controlled by their jobs. They wake up every morning before their boss tells them to come to work. They eat lunch during their coffee break. so that they can go back to work as soon as possible. They wake up earlier and sleep later. They work overtime and they hardly have any time for themselves. They live their lives based on the demands of their bosses. And when they finally retire, they find out that they are too old to enjoy their freedom. They were so busy making other people rich that they forgot to make their own lives enjoyable. So if you want to become rich, you need to control your life. You need to decide how you spend your time and money. You need to be the boss, not the employee. When you are the boss, you can choose when to wake up and when to go to bed. You can choose how much money to charge for your services. You can choose who to work with and who not to work with, or the one who controls the game. If you want to win the game, you need to be the boss, not the employee. Number 3, your house is not an asset. As mentioned before, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. If you have a property, but you have to pay money to maintain it, and it doesn't bring in any income, then it's a liability, not an asset. Robert explains that people often confuse assets with liabilities because they think that having a property makes them look rich. However, this is not true. Having a property is a liability, not an asset. In fact, the size of one's house is directly proportional to one's debt. The bigger the house, the bigger the mortgage. And this is why most wealthy people live in small houses. They understand that a house is not an asset. It is a liability. And the less debt they have, the better off they are. So if you want to become rich, you need to stop thinking of houses as assets. They are not. They're liabilities. The only way to make money with a property is to rent it out to someone else who wants to use it as their home. So if you're looking to invest in real estate, don't buy a house. Buy a rental property. And lastly, number 4, learn from others. Robert says that there are 3 types of people in this world: those who learn from others' mistakes, those who learn from their own mistakes, and those who do not learn from either. The first group of people learn from the mistakes of others and try to avoid making the same mistakes themselves. These are the people who study history, read books, and listen to advice from those who have more experience than they do. The second group of people learn from their own mistakes. They make a mistake, learn from it, and then try to avoid making the same mistake twice. These are the people who try new things, take risks, and are not afraid of failure. The third group of people do not learn from either. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again and wonder why they are not successful. These are the people who are stuck in the past, who refuse to change, and who do not believe in themselves. If you want to become rich, you need to learn from others. You cannot afford to make the same mistakes as everyone else. You need to study the financial game. Learn from those who are more experienced than you are and avoid the pitfalls that have already been dug for you. These were the 4 final thoughts from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We hope that you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and we will try to answer them. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.